Tell him I got the juice.
What does healing require? Well, first, I think that healing definitely requires a willingness to hear hard truths. Okay. So, as you've kind of transitioned out of whatever space that you're in that has brought you to what you believe is a healing journey, again, more specifically, the relationships that we're speaking of, dating relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, broken friendships, transitions, those kinds of things that are very, very real. Okay, one of the things that you're going to need to really be willing to see and face is hard truths. And that's not a comfortable message in today's culture. We all know that to be, right? Cancel culture is alive and well. Okay. But they, if you ask me, they can't cancel me because they ain't call me. I'm gonna just call it like it is. Okay. They can't cancel me because they didn't call me. But when we talk about this willingness to hear hard truths, that is the most difficult one, but it's also potentially the most necessary one. Okay, because if I just massage the wound, then I'm actually just kind of giving some remedies to remove the pain for a little bit, but it's actually not healing the wound initially, right? It's kind of like putting a band-aid over a gash, right? If you've had I went bike riding quite a bit in my childhood, and there were times where I fell off my bike, had a nasty gash, man. My knees were bad before I could even actually do anything with them in basketball and hoops and all that. But I had gashes, man, on my knees, and I remember one time where it was such a wide gash that there were thoughts that I was going to need stitches. Probably the most fearful thing that I ever thought of at the time, and who knew that now I would have experienced something quite similar on a few occasions. But there that knee, there was such a wide gash that there were thoughts I needed stitches. Thankfully it wasn't. But the other occasion where there were necessary stitches involved, where I had a nice open wound on my leg, okay, from hooping, and I think it was actually training in the summer that it happened. We did the whole band-aid thing, right? We did the whole band-aid thing. We covered it, we wrapped it, we did all that. Still got infected and was needing surgery in order to actually get on a place of healing and recovery from the initial injury. Why do I tell you all these things? Because the band-aid covering the lower leg where this initial injury took place, and which turned into staph infection, by the way, putting a band-aid over it didn't heal it. It didn't heal it. It didn't heal it. What was necessary for it to be healed was actually going through an in-depth surgery in which the initial thing that was infected was removed, because that was actually the issue, right? Something that was inside of my leg that was infected, that was filled with pus, that was, just nasty. Leg is throbbing thinking about it. Just kidding. But I had to go deeper in order to do it. And if we aren't willing to face the hard truths, then we're also saying in the same breath that we're unwilling to go deeper to the actual roots behind what's surfaced up as a result of this hurt and pain that we're feeling. Okay. So a lot of that comes with being honest, not just being honest about where we are, but being honest about how we feel, being honest about what's really going through our minds, instead of trying to just truck through it and rush through it, because it's better to not feel it than to feel anything. Instead of just trying to truck through it, we got to be willing to actually be just be honest about where we are, and then face the hard truths. And there's a lot of things that also incline, and it's not just facing hard truths about accepting where we are and how we feel. It's also facing hard truths about some roles that we may have played in the relationship in totality, right? So even though we can look at a situation like being cheated on and say, well, bro, I have no role to play in that. That person was straight up unfaithful and it hurt. I can get you on that. But here is something to consider. And again, this is a part of the hard truths. And so I say this with a lot of love, but it's more so in a question to you. Were there any signs that that person potentially gave you ahead of time that we may have missed? That's an uncomfortable one, but it's something to consider. And what's interesting is it's not even a question that is raised for you to blame yourself and for you to blame your environment, or blame, oh, I just can't believe I missed it and I'm so dumb. Like, no, 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 don't go there, because that's not even the point. Actually, when it comes to individuals who actually turn out to be very narcissistic manipulators, okay, they're really good at gaining your trust and making you feel making you feel trusted in the space. And they always have this weird agenda behind the scenes where they're really trying to get at something or get something from you. Once they have it, they go, but they play this long-term game in front of you, trying to give you what you really want, right? They use good words, they color code everything, but in the end, it's a poor agenda that works, man, because it was hard for us to see it because they just sold such a beautiful, genuine message. We just kind of thought that they were legit the whole time. When in reality they weren't. And it sucks because it took us having to get to that point of the breakup or of the split up or of the unfaithful act for us to actually see it. And so we do have to be willing to work backwards in those situations and ask ourselves, was there anything that this person did early on that I now can look back on and say, okay, that was something I missed. That was something I didn't catch. That was something I didn't see. Right. And now I'm able to take that information in. And for my next future relationship, okay, I'm actually going to be more mindful of this. I'm going to be more mindful of that kind of behavior. But not only is there has to be a willingness to hear hard truths. Okay, not the comfortable truths, not the truths that make us feel better about it or massage our wounds, but the ones that actually will grant us the healing and direction that we need to move forward. But it also has to deal with accountability and acceptance. Okay. Accountability and acceptance is also a part of what does healing require. Because if we aren't willing to take accountability and accept not just where we are, but maybe our own doings on the outcome, then we will always find a way to play the victim. We will always find a way to actually live out a victim minded lifestyle, and we'll kind of walk around with this entitlement as if we deserve to hold on to it. I remember earlier this year when I dealt with interesting heartbreak. It was kind of like one of my first ones, dealing with a disconnect. And when this happened, your boy was hurt, man. I was crushed. I was really thinking things were going right. And then, hey, just wasn't in the space. And not only did I end up interpreting the message wrong that was sent to me, that I later found out and admitted to, but throughout that process of just grieving and allowing myself to feel those emotions, what happened was I ended up trying to convince myself that I deserved to hold on to that pain. Like, nah, bro. Like, nah, bro. I deserve to feel this way. I'm entitled to feel this way. And that can be a dangerous place because you oftentimes can find yourself quickly getting to an area where you're like, I'm not taking no accountability. I don't care what nobody says. I'm just going to hold on to this. And in reality, you're hurting yourself. And in some way, shape, or form, it makes us feel good because we have someone else to blame. We have someone else to shift the blame. When in reality, we actually want to get to a place where if we really want to heal and advance forward, right? If we really want to get to a place where we can advance forward, we actually want to get to a place where we can accept what took place. Okay. So I accept that this is the reality, that what I envisioned may actually not happen anymore. Okay. Here's the tough questions that we ask. Were there any expectations that I placed on this person that actually shouldn't have been expected? Whew, man, talk about a tough one. Is there were there some expectations I had of this person that they actually didn't show me that I should have then expected such from them, right? Was there anything about this connection where I was kind of going more so on what I wanted this person to be or what I hope this person could be or where I hope this thing could go instead of actually being more present in the reality? That is a tough one too, because I'm still having to come across this acceptance and accountability piece where I'm like, but but they hurt me. So like, why? Why do I have to, take up for that? And in reality, we that again is just how we advance in the healing process. It's how we're actually able to get the healing we need by admitting that, yo, there's some things I might have done here that may not have been called for. And so actually I need to readjust that. I need to look back at that, right? And actually be honest. Okay, I put that expectation on them to text back quicker when I shouldn't have. I put that expectation on them to commit to me at an earlier space when really I had no evidence that not only that's what they were looking if that's what they were looking for, but expecting them to commit to me on short terms. Like we haven't actually done enough. We haven't spent enough time getting to know each other. And I was just expecting some kind of high level of commitment, you know? My expectations were misplaced. And so that's something to definitely deal with. And that's a part of the acceptance. Things as small as dealing with the expectations, dealing with what you expected out of this person versus what they really gave you and the reality. And again, it how I'm delivering it, I really just want to be mindful here in letting you know that this can't be something where you look at it and you play the blame or you take on the blame like, yo, I'm so dumb and I'm so stupid. Like, how did I not see it? Again, because there's so much context to your relationship and the relationship of others where that's not the case. Actually, there's some genuine context we need to consider as we're journeying through the healing process. But again, when we come to this healing process, accepting hard truths, facing hard truths, right? Though that those two things are huge. And that's kind of where it's a picture of it gets worse before it gets better because we have to walk ourselves back and kind of see some patterns that we may have carried. And it's okay to be honest too if the separation happened because of something you did. A part of the healing process is recognizing those tendencies and actually being willing to sit down and work through those prior to finding yourself in a space of commitment where expectations are a little bit higher and there's some more things that need to be considered. I think you got to be willing to take a step back and deal with that. Why are you self-sabotaging? What's causing that? Where does that come from? Where does that appetite begin? And where has it led you to all this time, right? So doing all these things, and this is why, y'all, I'm so serious when I say this, man. This is why the singleness is so important. Singleness isn't necessarily something that's talked about in nuance. It's more so like, oh, you're single, like we all know what that's like. But it's like, man, no, I think that there has to be more now than ever an importance of just revealing how important your single season is. Because if you actually take the time in your singleness to heal, recover, and get understanding on your tendencies and where you are, you will actually have a greater opportunity at future relationships. Like you knowing your tendencies and how your insecurities can sabotage certain places and actually looking to work on that actually puts you more at an eligible place for the relationship you really want. But it all comes with us having to face the hard stuff. And that's something that we don't want to do because it hurts too much. But let me ask you something. Is it better to hurt now with a purpose, or is it better to hurt later unnecessarily? I'm gonna ask that one more time. Is it better to hurt now but with a purpose, or is it better to hurt later unnecessarily? What's the difference? Well, if you hurt now with purpose, the purpose is you're getting the healing you need, right? You're moving someplace. You're going somewhere. But if you were to hurt later unnecessarily, the unnecessarily, reactions, responses, consequences came from, man, I could have really avoided this if I would have just taken my time back there. If I actually would have done the work I needed to, because what's interesting is the same patterns that caused me to lose the last relationship is in this relationship and it's probably going to be in the next relationship. So at what point do we stop and ask ourselves, am I the problem? At what point do we start asking ourselves what patterns are in me that's creating the environment that I'm constantly entering into and constantly rejecting and leaving? What about me? Right? Again, it's the toughest question, but it's the most important. And this is what it's like to heal. Like we all think the healing is supposed to be something cute and miraculous sometimes, and it can be miraculous because I serve a God. Say my God won't do it. He can do it miraculously, but a lot of times, a lot of these healings that we go through relationally takes work, and it takes us being willing to face the hard things in order to actually get there. And a lot of times, we're not willing to face the hard things because it hurts too much, or we would just much rather feel anything else than what we're feeling right now, and that's understandable. However, we don't want to stay there. Willingness to hear hard truths, accountability, and acceptance. Also, leaning into Christ, your boy. I'm coming with it. Okay. Don't even ask no questions. That's where we're at. The foundation of Christ. Don't take the red pill, take the God pill, my boy. We got to be willing to hear and lean into the voice of God and really listen into what his word has to say on the matter. That's really where it's at. Okay. There's so many remedies that we turn to where we're like, yo, yep, this I need the drinking, I need the weed, I need the distractions, I need the girls, I need all the Snapchats, I need all the attention, I need the work. Let's not even go to the extremes of things that we would just automatically think about. I need the extra work and overtime. I need the busyness. I need my schedule full. I don't want to give myself no space or time to even think about this, right? Let me just work, 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 work. Let me just get lost in the flow and busyness of life. That's real. Let me get into this operation of just being in a hurry, right? I want to talk to everybody. I want to do everything. I'm never home. I'm never by myself. I'm never wanting to spend time alone in my own thinking space. Those things are indicators potentially that we're running from something. And oftentimes in these healing spaces, we're running from maybe some truths. We're running from the pain because it's uncomfortable. But at some point, we got to be willing to sit down and deal with that. And there's no better person that wants to sit down and deal with it with us than Jesus, because we're never wanting to go into that alone, and he doesn't want us to be in that alone. He wants to be in it with you. That's the beautiful thing. And the same one who can allow such pain to take place in your life is the same one we actually need in order to overcome it and actually walk through it properly. I can't tell y'all, man, just from my own testimony, how much I literally depended on a place of prayer in that same season I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this year. Prayer and speaking to counsel, speaking to wise individuals was so necessary. It was so necessary. I needed that mug. And if I didn't have it, man, I don't know. I don't know, man. I probably would have given my ear to other things and other outlets. Truth be told, I'm no different than a lot of you guys. I'm really not. Like I was probably one red pill message away from just letting that thing go. Probably. Probably. Reverting back to old thoughts, old ways, old habits, probably. Yeah, and that's what heartbreak can do to you. That's what separation and those kinds of things can do to you when you lose a relationship that you never really intended on losing, thought you would lose. Yeah, that stuff does it to you. Does it to you. Those thoughts flood your mind like crazy. But when we give our ear to God, he's the one that can heal. He's the one that can restore. He's the one that can really deal with the wounds that even we may not be able to see so clearly in the moments of pain and suffering. And that's really the message there. Not that we can do it on our own, but that I gotta give my ear to God. I have to. That looks like reading, that looks like Bible reading, that looks like listening to sermons, that looks like podcasts, that looks like getting in contact with community and talking to other same, similar believers who are in the same foundations, right? Because I can't take my problems to the world because they're not going to give me anything but worldly solutions that don't actually solve the internal, eternal problems that I'm actually wrestling with. That won't help me. I got to come to people who are like minded and who know the same Christ that I care about, who actually can encourage me and nourish me and help me walk with me through that journey. Can I just stop right here and just say that sometimes we just need people to walk with us, y'all? Like, I don't even need an answer. I just need you to walk with me. So let's add another thing to what does healing require? Somebody to walk with me. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 through 10 tells us two are better than one. I cannot walk this life alone. And it's such a tendency to do that, right? Because we kind of buy into those lies. Oh, well, nobody's gonna care, nobody's gonna make room for it. I can't give my issues to this person. I can't do it because they're not gonna make room for it. They can't make room for it. It's gonna be so tough, and we buy into those stories that we tell ourselves. And I just really wanted you to step back and ask yourself, who told you that? Like, who told you that they didn't want to hear that they didn't have time for it? Who told you that they weren't available? Is that your own thinking, or do you actually have evidence behind this? Have you actually asked that person, "Hey, I got a lot on my mind right now. Do you have any kind of space to maybe help me talk through these things and walk through these things?" Like really asking yourself those kind of questions and really comparing it to truth. Because sometimes I know I've done it so many times, so many narratives I draw up in my mind, and you get to this one place in your mind. You get to one place that you always drive to, and it's so scary. And you get to the end of that conclusion of a drawn up story. None of it's happened, but it's where your mind goes, and you can see it clear as day. And then you kind of back out and zone out. You're like, oh snap, how did I get there? And when you break out of that and you come back to yourself, that's when you're able to compare it to truth. Okay, You went through that. You did that whole journey. Is any of that true? Where? How? What facts? What evidence do you have to point to that being true? Right? And being with other people, journeying with other people is actually what allows us to start seeing that. Because if I just talk to myself out loud all day, I'm going to convince myself of something, I guess. But when I'm around people who are logical, reasonable, who are again in matching values and are good listeners, are able to lend something to me, getting into that community, I can spit some things and they can give some things back and kind of help me see things that I didn't see, I didn't consider, I didn't actually put myself in a position to really think on. So healing requires all of that. Thank you so much for joining me in this clip. This is from a recent live stream that I have just done. If you want to check that out, click somewhere on the screen and there you can catch the full replay along with so much more content we've got here for you, learning how to navigate and grow healthy, happy, whole, and biblical relationships. I'll see you over there.